The massive chamber stretched out like a small city. Thousands of seats rose in perfect circles, each one designed for a different alien species. Some seats held creatures that looked like giant insects. Others accommodated beings made of pure light. In the far corner, barely visible from the center stage, sat Dr. Sarah Chundan. She was alone at the human table. 3 empty chairs beside her reminded everyone of humanity's small place in the galaxy. The nameplate in front of her read Earth Observer Status in the common galactic script. No voting rights. No voice in major decisions. Just watching and learning. Sarah adjusted her simple gray uniform and checked her recording device. Everything the council said today would be sent back to Earth. Her job was to listen, observe, and report. Nothing more. The instructions from Earth Command were always the same. Stay quiet, stay small, stay unnoticed. The council chamber buzzed with hundreds of different languages. Universal translators turned the chaos into something Sarah could understand. She had been coming here for 12 years now. 12 years of sitting in the back corner while the galaxy's great powers made decisions that affected billions of lives. Chancellor Vexhai of the Vraxi stepped up to the speaking platform. The Vraxi looked like humans, but taller and with skin that changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, Vexhai's skin showed the deep purple of confidence. The Vraxi controlled most of the galaxy's medicine and food production through their advanced understanding of biology. Today, we discussed the mining rights for the Kepler sector, Vexhai announced. His voice carried easily through the chamber's sound system. The Vraxi propose a joint operation with our Keth allies. Murmurs of agreement came from the Keth section. The Keth were once organic beings, but they had replaced their bodies with machines centuries ago. Now they looked like walking metal skeletons with glowing blue eyes. They controlled most of the galaxy's computer systems and manufacturing. Sarah made notes on her tablet. The Kepler sector was close to human space, but nobody asked for humanity's opinion. They never did. Earth was too new, too primitive, too small to matter in these discussions. Commander Thex of the Thakari Federation stood next. The Thakari looked like enormous bears covered in silver fur, but they were the galaxy's greatest warriors and philosophers. Thex's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The Thakari Federation supports this proposal. However, we suggest increased security for the mining operations. The Outer Rim has seen more pirate activity lately. Sarah kept her face neutral, but she almost smiled. The Thakari thought small groups of desperate criminals were the biggest threat in the Outer Rim. They had no idea what was really out there. Energy Marshal Lux Venta materialized at the Zephyrian speaking area. The Zephyrians were beings of pure energy who could take any shape they wanted. Lux Vena appeared as a tall column of golden light with a voice that sounded like wind chimes. The Zephyrian Empire will provide power sources for the mining equipment. Our energy manipulation technology surpasses all others in the galaxy. More murmurs of agreement. The 4 great powers, Vraxi, Keth, Thakari, and Zephyrian, controlled almost everything important in the galaxy. Everyone else just followed their lead or got out of the way. Sarah glanced at her watch. 3 hours into the session, and nobody had even looked at the human section. That was normal. In her 12 years here, the Council had directly addressed humanity maybe 20 times. Usually just asked for their yearly report on human progress. The discussion moved to trade routes. The Council members talked about moving goods between star systems, like they were discussing local shopping. Sarah listened to them plan shipping lanes that passed right through human space without asking permission. To them, human territory was just empty space with a few primitive settlements that didn't matter. The trade route through. The Sol system remains viable, announced Coordinator Zix of the Melanie Union. Melanie looked like giant purple jellyfish and controlled most of the galaxy's transportation networks. The native species there is harmless. They barely understand their own technology, much less ours. Several council members made sounds that Sarah recognized as laughter. The universal translator couldn't capture humor perfectly, but the message was clear. Humans were a joke to them. Sarah's tablet chimed softly with a message from Earth Command. The text appeared in simple English. Continue observations. Report all discussions regarding human space. Maintain cover. She typed back. Understood. Status unchanged. They still see us as primitives. The response came quickly. Good, keep thinking that. Sarah deleted the messages and returned her attention to the council. They were now discussing the assignment of new colony worlds. Thousands of planets across the galaxy, and the great powers divided them up like pieces of cake. The rim worlds need better development, suggested bioengineer Kexmai of the Vraxi. Perhaps we should consider using some of the primitive species for basic labor. The humans, for example, seem physically capable and follow orders well. Sarah's hand tightened on her stylus, but she kept her expression neutral. This wasn't the first time someone had suggested using humans as workers. So far, the idea had never gained much support, because most council members thought humans were too stupid to be useful. The humans barely understand their own machines, laughed computation nodes X7 of the Keth Collective. Using them for complex tasks would be inefficient. Perhaps for simple farming or basic mining. The discussion moved on, but Sarah continued taking notes. Every insult, every dismissive comment, every plan that ignored human rights went into her report. Earth Command wanted to know exactly how the galaxy saw humanity. As the session ended, Sarah gathered her things and prepared to leave. The other council members filed out in their respective groups, talking and laughing. None of them paid attention to the quiet human woman in the corner. Sarah walked through the station's corridors, toward her small quarters. The space station that housed the Galactic Council was enormous, with sections designed for every member species. The human section was tiny, just a few rooms near the maintenance areas. In her quarters, Sarah activated her secure communication system. The quantum relay would send her report instantly across thousands of light years to Earth Command. She attached her recordings and typed her daily summary. Day 4234 of observation mission. Council continues to view humanity as primitive and harmless. Trade routes through human space approved without consultation. Suggestion made to use humans for manual labor. Proposal dismissed due to perceived low intelligence. Recommend continued monitoring. She paused before adding the last line. They have no idea what we're really capable of. Maintaining cover as instructed. Sarah sent the report and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring another day of sitting quietly in the corner, watching and listening as the galaxy's great powers made decisions that affected everyone. They thought they were the masters of the universe. They were wrong. 27 years had passed since Sarah Chen first sat in that corner chair. Her hair was gray now, and lines marked her face, but her eyes remained sharp and alert. She had watched the Galactic Council change and grow, adding new member species while humanity remained exactly where it started, in the back corner with observer status. The insults had started small. A casual comment here, a dismissive laugh there. But over the years, they had grown bolder and crueler. What began as gentle mockery had become open contempt. Today's session focused on galactic health standards. Biochancellor HFY stood at the central platform, his skin showing the bright orange of excitement. The Vraxi had developed a new treatment for a disease that affected most organic species in the galaxy. Our latest breakthrough will save millions of lives, HFY announced proudly. However, testing shows it has no effect on humans. Their primitive biology simply cannot process advanced medicine. Laughter filled the chamber. Sarah kept her face calm while making notes. The truth was different, of course. Human biology was far more complex than the Vraxi suspected. But Earth Command's orders remained the same. Observe, record, and stay hidden. Perhaps it is for the best, added Chief Physician Mextai, another Vraxi leader. Humans breed like animals anyway. Their population needs natural controls, or they will overrun their small world. More laughter. Sarah's stylus pressed harder against her tablet, but she continued writing. Every word went into the record. Computation. No Prime Zek 1 of the Keth Collective spoke next. The ancient machine's voice was cold and mechanical. This discussion raises an interesting question about human brain capacity. Our studies show human neural activity is remarkably basic. Perhaps we should consider using human brains as processing substrates for simple calculations. Sarah's blood ran cold. The Keth were suggesting using human brains like computer parts. She typed rapidly, making sure to capture every detail of the proposal. An intriguing idea, responded Energy Marshal Lux Venta of the Zephyrians, the golden light being pulsed brighter with interest. Humans appear to have strong backs and simple minds. They could serve as adequate pack animals for our colonization efforts. War Sage Krelthik of the Thakari Federation slammed his massive fist on his desk. The bear-like warrior's silver fur bristled with anger, but not at the suggestions about humans. He was angry at their perceived weakness. You speak of using these pathetic creatures as if they were worth the effort, Krelthik growled. Humans are defective primates who stumbled into space travel by accident. They contribute nothing to galactic civilization. Nothing. The chamber erupted in agreement. Hundreds of alien voices joined in condemning humanity as worthless, stupid, and barely worthy of life. Sarah sat quietly in her corner, recording every word while her heart pounded with rage. The years continued to pass. The insults grew worse. During a trade summit, Coordinator Zix called humans useful only for carrying heavy objects, like well-trained pack animals. During a technology conference, Engineer Vexwo suggested that human settlements could be improved by replacing the population with more intelligent species. Sarah filed her reports faithfully. Each insult, each suggestion of human slavery, each dismissive comment went straight to Earth Command. The responses were always the same. Continue observation. Maintain cover. Do not react. But Sarah could see the pattern. The galaxy's great powers were moving toward a decision about humanity's future. The discussions were no longer casual insults. They were serious planning sessions about what to do with the human problem. The breaking point came during the Council's annual review session. Sarah sat in her usual corner, now 53 years old and the longest-serving human ambassador in galactic history. Few council members even remembered when humans first arrived. To most of them, humanity had always been the pathetic species in the back corner. Warsage Krelthik stood at the central platform. His massive frame cast shadows across the speaking area. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered star systems and commanded respect across the galaxy. Fellow council members, he began, we have tolerated the human presence for too long. These creatures crawled from their mudball world and somehow stumbled into faster-than-light travel. But look at them now. He gestured toward Sarah's corner. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at the lone human woman sitting quietly at her small table. For over a century, they have contributed nothing to our civilization. They understand nothing of advanced technology. They possess nothing of value. They are a waste of space and resources. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah continued taking notes, but her hands trembled slightly. I propose that we end this charade, Krelthak continued. Humans should be classified as what they truly are, a servant species. Let them serve their betters in the mines and farms of the outer rim worlds. Let them learn their proper place in the universe. The chamber erupted in cheers. Sarah's tablet recorded decibel levels that hurt her ears. For the first time in her long career, she considered breaking her cover and speaking up. But her orders were clear. Chancellor Vex High called for order. The Thakari War Sage speaks wisdom. I formally propose Resolution 2847, the reclassification of humanity as a servant species, suitable only for manual labor and basic resource extraction. Seconded. Called Computation Node Prime Zek 1. Thirded. Added Energy Marshal Lux Venta. The vote was called immediately. Sarah watched in horror as species after species voted to enslave humanity. The numbers appeared on the main display. 821 in favor, 23 abstentions, 3 opposed. War Sage Krulthik returned to the platform for a final speech. His words would later be known throughout human space as the Great Insult. This vote confirms what we have always known, he declared. Humans are inferior in every way that matters. They lack intelligence, strength, and purpose. They think themselves worthy of sitting among the stars, but they are nothing more than clever animals. From this day forward, let them serve their betters as nature intended. The chamber shook with applause and cheers. Sarah sat frozen in her corner, watching the celebration of humanity's enslavement. Species that had never spoken to a human were cheering for the right to own them. For the first time in over 50 years, Sarah broke protocol. She activated her emergency communication channel and sent a priority message to Earth Command. Resolution 2847 passed. Humanity officially classified as servant species. Slavery authorized. Council celebrates. Requesting immediate instructions. The response came within minutes. Article 7 protocols are hereby authorized. The Covenant of Silence is broken. Prepare for recall. Humanity will respond. Sarah read the message 3 times before deleting it. Article 7. She had hoped never to see those words. They meant the end of everything. The end of hiding, the end of pretending to be weak, the end of humanity's greatest secret. She gathered her things slowly, watching as council members continued celebrating. They were planning which humans would go to which masters. They discussed breeding programs and work assignments. They talked about humanity like livestock. As Sarah walked toward the exit, War Sage Krelthik noticed her leaving. "Look," he called out loudly. "Even their pathetic representative runs away rather than face the truth of their species' fate." Laughter followed her out of the chamber. Sarah kept walking, her face calm and expressionless. But inside she smiled for the first time in decades. They had no idea what was coming. In her quarters, Sarah activated her full communication array for the last time. Her final report to Earth Command was brief. Mission complete. Covenant of Silence officially broken by galactic decision. They have chosen slavery. The galaxy will learn what humans truly are. Recommend immediate activation of Revelation Protocol. She packed her few belongings and prepared to leave the space station that had been her home for half her life. Tomorrow, the galaxy would wake up to a very different universe. Tonight, they could enjoy their celebration. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the TDS Prometheus, watching Earth slowly rotate beneath him. The massive ship hung in space like a dark predator, invisible to every sensor in the galaxy except human ones. For 127 years, ships like this one had remained hidden, waiting for a signal that he hoped would never come. Today, that signal had arrived. Admiral called Captain Lisa Park from the communication station. "We've received Ambassador Chun's final report. Resolution 2847 has passed. Article 7 protocols are now active." Webb nodded grimly. He had known Sarah Chun for 40 years. She had volunteered for the most difficult assignment in human space, pretending to be weak, while watching the galaxy plan humanity's destruction. Now her decades of sacrifice would finally serve their purpose. "Send a recall order," Webb commanded. "Bring her home." "Yes, sir." "Admiral, we're also receiving activation confirmations from all hidden installations throughout the galaxy. Phoenix Base, Dragon's Nest, Olympus Station, they're all coming online. Webb walked to the central display table. With a gesture, he activated a holographic map of the galaxy. Thousands of red dots appeared, scattered across every major trade route, military installation, and government center. Each dot represented years of careful infiltration and preparation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb announced to his crew, "for over a century, the galaxy has believed humans to be primitive and harmless. Today, we show them the truth." The truth was staggering. While the Galactic Council had dismissed humanity as backward, human agents had infiltrated every major organization in the galaxy. The simple cargo pilots flying through alien space were actually intelligence officers. The primitive humans working in alien factories were saboteurs and hackers. The harmless traders visiting alien worlds were mapping defenses and resources. Humanity had not been sitting quietly on Earth. They had been everywhere. "Sir," reported Commander Hayes from the tactical station, "we have confirmation from all sleeper cells. Operation Looking Glass is complete. We have detailed intelligence on every major military installation, government facility, and defensive position in council space." Webb smiled coldly. Operation Looking Glass had taken 8 decades to complete. Human agents had literally walked into alien governments and recorded everything. The aliens had been so convinced of human stupidity that they never suspected their primitive servants were actually elite spies. "What about the fleet status?" Webb asked. "All hidden ships report ready, sir. The Theseus, Achilles, and Hercules battle groups are in position. Total strength: 412 capital ships, 800 destroyers, and over 2,000 support vessels." The numbers would have shocked the Galactic Council. Their combined fleets numbered maybe 300 major ships. They had assumed humanity had perhaps a dozen primitive vessels. At most, they were wrong about everything. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command," Captain Park announced. The main screen activated, showing Fleet Admiral Sarah Knox in the underground command center beneath the Pacific Ocean. Her expression was stone cold. "Admiral Webb, you have full authorization to execute Revelation Protocol. Show the galaxy what humanity really is. Make them understand the price of their arrogance." "Understood, Admiral Knox. What are our rules of engagement?" "Disable their major military assets. Capture their leadership alive. Minimize civilian casualties. This is not about revenge, Marcus. This is about justice." Webb saluted. "It will be done." The transmission ended, and Webb turned back to his crew. Around him, the bridge hummed with activity as officers prepared for the largest military operation in human history. "Captain Park, send the general signal. All units are to begin Phase 1 immediately." Signal sent, Admiral. Across the galaxy, human sleeper agents received their orders simultaneously. In the Vraxi capital, Dr. James Miller, who had worked as a simple lab assistant for 30 years, walked into the central bioresearch facility and activated devices that shut down every major medical system in Vraxi space on the Keth home world. Engineer Rebecca Chung, no relation to Ambassador Chung, entered the main computational center where she had been employed as a basic maintenance worker for 2 decades. She inserted a small device into the quantum processor core. Within minutes, every Keth computer system began experiencing cascading errors in Thakari space. Marine Captain David Kim stepped out of his role as a cargo handler and activated hidden transmitters throughout their military installations. Suddenly, every impregnable Thakari fortress found its defenses turned against itself. The Zephyrians discovered that their energy manipulation technology had mysterious flaws that appeared everywhere at once. The beings of pure energy found themselves trapped in containment fields created by their own equipment. Phase 1 took exactly 6 hours. When it was complete, every major military installation in Council space was either disabled or under human control. Not a single shot had been fired. Phase 1 complete, Admiral, reported Commander Hayes. All major defensive positions are neutralized. Enemy fleets are dead in space. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. The second phase involved something the galaxy had never seen before: human military technology. While the aliens had focused on improving their existing advantages, humans had developed entirely new forms of warfare. The Prometheus and her sister ships activated their displacement drives. To alien sensors, the human fleet simply vanished. A second later, they materialized inside the Thakari home system, bypassing every defense and appearing directly above the planet. War Sage. Krelthak was in his war room planning the distribution of human slaves when alarms began screaming throughout his fortress. He rushed to the command center, where his officers stood in stunned silence. "What is happening?" he roared. "Sir," stammered his communications officer, "there are ships in orbit. Massive ships. They appeared from nothing. Impossible. Our defenses would have detected any fleet approaching." "Sir, they didn't approach. They just appeared." On the main screen, they could see the human fleet hanging in space above their world like dark angels of judgment. The ships were enormous, dwarfing even the largest Thakari vessels. Worse, they looked nothing like the primitive human technology the Council had seen in intelligence reports. "Open a channel," Webb commanded from the Prometheus. His voice was broadcast across the planet. "War Sage Krelthak, this is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. You are under arrest for crimes against sentient beings. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Krelthak stared at the screen in shock. "Humans? Impossible. You are primitive. You are weak." "We have been many things," Webb replied calmly. "Quiet, patient, careful, but never weak." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Vraxi Biochancellor found human ships appearing above every major Vraxi world simultaneously. The Keth Collective discovered that their computational networks were completely under human control. The Zephyrians realized that beings they had considered pack animals had developed technology that treated their energy forms like simple batteries. "Sir," reported Captain Park, "we're receiving surrender signals from 17 major installations. The Melanie Union is requesting immediate negotiations. 3 minor species have already withdrawn from the Galactic Council. And the major powers? The Vraxi are trying to organize resistance, but their bioweapons are useless against our immune systems. The Keth are attempting to regain control of their networks, but our quantum viruses are adapting faster than they can respond. The Thakari are confused." Webb understood. The Thakari were warriors who believed in honor and strength. They had built their entire culture around the idea that the strong ruled the weak. Discovering that they had been ruled by beings they considered inferior was shattering their worldview. "What about civilian casualties?" "None, sir. Our precision strikes disabled military targets only. All major population centers remain untouched." "Good. That was always the priority." Phase 3 began when human forces surrounded the Galactic Council station. Ambassador Chen was already aboard her evacuation ship, but she requested permission to return to the Council chambers one last time. "Permission granted, Ambassador," Webb told her over the communication link. "You've earned the right to see their faces when they realize the truth." Sarah Chun walked back into the council chambers that had been her prison for half a century. The great powers were gathered in emergency session, trying to understand how their perfect universe had collapsed in a single day. War Sage Krelthak saw her enter and roared in fury. "You! What have you done? What trickery is this?" Sarah walked calmly to the center of the chamber, where she had never been allowed to stand before. She was no longer wearing her simple gray uniform. Instead, she wore the black and silver dress uniform of a Terran intelligence colonel. "There is no trickery," she said quietly. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "You have seen humanity as we truly are." "Impossible!" screamed Bio-Chancellor HFY, his skin flashing red with rage and fear. "You are primitives. Animals." "We are survivors," Sarah replied. "For over a century, we watched you plan our enslavement. We listened to your insults. We recorded your every word and deed. And we prepared." She gestured to the walls around them, where human soldiers now stood at every entrance. The aliens finally, the first day of humanity's response, became known throughout the galaxy as the Silent Thunder. Not because it was quiet, but because the galaxy's great powers never heard it coming. War Sage Krelthik stood in his command center on Thakari Prime, staring at displays that made no sense. Every fortress world in Thakari space was reporting the same impossible situation. Their defenses were not responding to commands. "Report," he demanded from his communications officer. "Sir, Fortress Volcara reports all weapon systems offline. Fortress Kronos says their shields are down. Fortress Omega. Sir, Fortress Omega's weapons are targeting their own ships." Krelthak's massive hands crushed the arms of his command chair. "How is this possible? Our technology is centuries ahead of these primitives." What Krelthak didn't know was that human engineers had been working inside Thakari military installations for 40 years. Every piece of equipment, every computer system, every defensive grid had been quietly modified. Not enough to be noticeable, but enough to be controlled when the time came. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos stood in a hidden chamber deep inside Fortress Volcara. She had worked as a simple maintenance worker for the past 15 years, quietly installing human technology throughout the massive fortress. Today, she was the most powerful person on the planet. "This is Santos to Fleet Command," she spoke into her communicator. "Fortress Volcara is under our control. All weapon systems redirected to target remaining hostile positions." "Acknowledge, Santos." "Excellent work." Maria looked at her watch. 6 hours since activation began. In 6 hours, the most powerful military force in the galaxy had become helpless. Not through massive battles or destruction, but through careful planning and patience. Across Thakari space, similar scenes played out. UN agents emerged from their cover and took control of installations they had secretly controlled for decades. The proud warrior race discovered that their greatest weakness was their arrogance. They had never imagined that their inferior workers might be elite saboteurs. Meanwhile, in Keth space, the collective faced a different kind of horror. Their perfect logical minds were experiencing something they had forgotten how to handle. Confusion.Prime Nod Zik 1 tried to process the cascade of errors flooding the collective's networks. The quantum computers that ran their civilization were reporting impossible logical contradictions. Systems that had run perfectly for centuries were now asking questions that had no answers. Dr. Rachel Kim sat in a coffee shop on New Axiom, the Keth capital world. She looked like any other human visitor. Tourism was one of the few things humans were officially allowed to do in council space. But Rachel was one of humanity's top quantum computing specialists, and for 23 years. She had been slowly introducing modified code into the Keth networks. The modifications were genius in their simplicity. They didn't break the Keth systems. Instead, they presented the logical minds with paradoxes that their rigid thinking couldn't resolve. A digital form of psychological warfare designed specifically to target artificial intelligence. "Attention, Keth Collective," Rachel spoke into her communicator, knowing that the collective would hear her words through every speaker on the planet. "This is Dr. Rachel Kim of Terran Intelligence. Your networks are now under human control. Cease all military operations immediately, or face complete system shutdown." Prime Nod Zek-1's voice responded through the citywide communication system. The ancient machine's voice contained something new: uncertainty. "This is impossible." Our security protocols are perfect. No, Rachel replied calmly. Your security protocols assume attackers think like you do. Humans think differently. The Keth had designed their security to stop other artificial intelligences or logical organic minds. They had never considered defense against human intuition, creativity, and emotional reasoning. It was like trying to use a lock designed for keys to stop someone with a blowtorch dot in Vraxi space. The biological masters of the galaxy faced their own nightmare. Their bioweapons, diseases, and genetic modifications were completely useless against their targets. Bio-Chancellor HFY stood in his personal laboratory, watching his finest creations die in their containment units. The toxins that could kill any known organic species were breaking down into harmless compounds. The diseases that affected every form of life in the galaxy were simply ignored by human immune systems. How? He whispered to himself. Dr. James Miller appeared behind him. For 30 years, the HFY had considered Miller a useful but limited human assistant. Now Miller stood in full Terran military uniform, no longer hiding his true nature. Because we've been studying your weapons for a century, Miller explained. Every toxin you've created, we've built immunity to. Every disease you've developed, we've already survived. You taught us your secrets while calling us stupid. HFY's skin flashed through a dozen colors, showing fear, rage, and confusion. You deceived us. You deceived yourselves, Miller replied. You saw what you wanted to see. Primitive beings who could be exploited. You never asked what humans were truly capable of. The Vraxi had designed biological weapons based on the assumption that humans were simple primates with basic immune systems. They never realized that human genetics were far more complex than they appeared. Worse, they had unknowingly given humans access to their biological databases for decades. The Zephyrians faced perhaps the most shocking discovery. The beings of pure energy had always considered themselves the most advanced form of life in the galaxy. Physical matter was primitive. Energy was perfection. They were wrong. Energy Marshal Lux Venna found himself trapped in a containment field in his own command chamber. The field was generated by Zephyrian technology, but it was controlled by humans. Around him, other energy beings flickered helplessly as human-modified equipment treated their pure energy. Existence like simple electrical current. Captain Tom Rodriguez stood at the control panel, adjusting the containment field strength. He had worked as a basic technician in Zephyrian space for 18 years. In reality, he was one of humanity's leading experts on energy manipulation. You consider yourselves beings of pure energy, Rodriguez said conversationally. But energy follows rules, physics, mathematics, laws that can be understood and controlled. Lux Venus' golden light pulsed with rage. We are beyond physical limitations. We transcended matter eons ago. No, Rodriguez replied. You just changed forms. Energy is still matter, just organized differently. And humans understand matter very well. The Zephyrians had made a critical error. They assumed that beings trapped in physical bodies couldn't understand energy manipulation. They never suspected that humans had developed matter-energy conversion technology that made their advanced abilities look like simple tricks taught by the end of the second day. Every major military installation in council space was under human control. The great powers that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves completely helpless. But humans weren't finished. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as the third day began. Around him, displays showed the status of the entire galaxy. Every trade route, every military base, every government center was marked with human flags. Sir, reported Captain Park, we're receiving surrender offers from 47 member species. The Andorian Confederacy wants to discuss terms. The Rigel Union has offered complete cooperation. What about the major powers? The Vraxi are still trying to reorganize, but their biological weapons are useless. The Keth Collective is confused. Their logical processes can't handle our paradox algorithms. The Thakari are demanding single combat with human champions. Webb almost smiled at that last part. The Thakari still didn't understand. This wasn't about individual strength or honor duels. This was about strategy, planning, and the ability to see the big picture. And the Zephyrians? Contained, sir, Dr. Rodriguez. Reports that energy-based life forms are surprisingly easy to control once you understand the physics. Good. Prepare for the final phase. The third phase was the most important. Capturing the Galactic Council itself. The space station that housed the galaxy's government had been humanity's target from the beginning. Everything else was just preparation. Sarah-chan stood in the Prometheus's shuttle bay, preparing to return to the council station one more time. She wore full combat armor now, no longer pretending to be a simple diplomat. Beside her stood a squad of Terran Marines who had been disguised as station maintenance workers for over a decade. "Ma'am," said Sergeant Williams, "we have full control of the station's security systems. All escape routes are sealed. The council members are trapped in the main chamber." "Excellent. Remember, we want them alive. They need to stand trial." "Understood, ma'am." The shuttle docked at the station without interference. After all, it was just Ambassador Chun returning from her ship. Security didn't even question why she had an armed escort now. They walked through corridors that Sarah had traveled for 50 years. But now, instead of being ignored, she was followed by the shocked stares of aliens, who were beginning to understand the truth. The council chambers were in chaos when Sarah arrived. Representatives from hundreds of species argued, screamed, and demanded explanations that no one could give. 1 year later, Sarah Chun stood at the podium of the Reformed Galactic Assembly. The same chamber that had once echoed with insults about human inferiority now hosted representatives from over 1,200 species. But everything had changed. The old council seats with their rigid hierarchy were gone. In their place sat curved sections where species mingled freely, arranged by common interests rather than power levels. The human section was no larger than any other. Humanity had explicitly refused the dominant position the old council system would have given them. Behind Sarah hung a new banner. Instead of the old council symbol of concentric circles showing species hierarchy, the new emblem showed interlocking rings of equal size. Beneath it, words in every galactic language declared humanity's promise to the universe. Silent guardians, watchful protectors. Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives. Many faces were familiar from her decades of observation, but their expressions had changed. Gone was the casual arrogance she had endured for so long. In its place was something she had never seen directed at humans before: respect. 1 year ago, she began, this chamber voted to enslave humanity. Today, we gather to celebrate the signing of the Galactic Constitution of Rights, a document that guarantees no sentient being will ever face such a fate again. Applause filled the chamber. Not the mocking laughter Sarah remembered, but genuine appreciation from beings who had learned what justice meant. The trials had been the turning point. Instead of executing their former oppressors, humanity had insisted on fair legal proceedings. War Sage Krelthuk, Biochancellor Yex-Hai, and the other leaders who had planned human slavery were given full legal representation and transparent trials. The evidence presented shocked the galaxy. Hidden recordings from Sarah's decades of observation showed exactly what the great powers had planned. Detailed documents revealed breeding programs, work assignments, and genetic modification schemes designed to turn humans into better slaves. But the trials also revealed something else. The extent of human infiltration throughout galactic society. Dr. James Miller testified about his 30 years inside Raxi Biological Research. His work hadn't been limited to gathering intelligence. He had quietly prevented 17 different biological weapons from being perfected, probably saving millions of alien lives in the process. Engineer Rebecca Chun described her decades maintaining Keth computer systems. She hadn't just mapped their networks, she had been secretly fixing critical errors and preventing system crashes that would have killed thousands of cybernetic beings. Captain David Kim explained his work in Thakari space. While gathering military intelligence, he had quietly prevented 3 different wars between minor species by ensuring certain weapon shipments never arrived at their destinations. The pattern became clear. For over a century, humans hadn't just been hiding and observing. They had been protecting galactic civilization from its own worst impulses. We could have revealed ourselves at any time, Admiral Webb testified during Krell-Thek's trial. We had the technology and information to conquer the galaxy decades ago. But we chose to remain hidden, hoping you would eventually choose a better path. Why? Demanded Krell-Thek's defense attorney, a Melanie advocate who had initially expected to represent a victim of human aggression. Why didn't you just take control when you had the advantage? Because conquest isn't leadership, Webb replied. True strength isn't about domination. It's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The trials lasted 6 months. In the end, the worst offenders received sentences that matched their crimes. Krell-Thek and the others who had actively planned human enslavement were sentenced to community service, working alongside members of the species they had tried to enslave, learning empathy through shared labor. But the real transformation came from the revelations about human capabilities. The galaxy discovered that Earth's primitive population was actually spread across over 400 worlds. The small colony ships that had supposedly carried humans to nearby systems were actually massive exploration vessels that had mapped most of the galaxy. The backward human technology was centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. Most shocking of all was the discovery of the Terran Guardian fleet, hidden throughout the Vadongwaj galaxy in asteroid bases, nebula stations, and disguised merchant ships was a military force larger than the combined fleets of all Council species. For over a century, humanity had been powerful enough to conquer the galaxy and had chosen not to. The question, said Assembly Representative Kixto of the Andorian Confederacy during one of the constitutional debates, is why they waited so long to reveal themselves. Sarah answered from her position as Secretary General of the Reformed Assembly. Because we hoped we would never have to. Every time we revealed another human capability, we also revealed how much we had been holding back. We wanted to join galactic civilization as equals, not conquerors. The new Constitution reflected human values while respecting alien cultures. Every sentient being had the right to freedom, self-determination, and protection from exploitation. No species could be classified as inferior or servant class. Decisions affecting multiple species required consensus. Not domination by the powerful, but the humans also made their expectations clear. Freedom comes with responsibility, Sarah explained during the Constitution's final debate. The galaxy has seen what happens when the strong exploit the weak. Humanity will not allow that to happen again. The Guardian fleet, no longer hidden, patrolled the space lanes. Their mission was simple: protect the innocent, prevent wars, and ensure that the mistakes of the old Council were never repeated. Some species initially resented human oversight. The Zephyrians, in particular, struggled with the idea that their energy transcendence didn't make them superior to physical beings. But humanity's response was patient education. Rather than forced. Energy Marshal Lux Venta found himself assigned to work with Dr. Rodriguez on a joint energy research project. The same human who had easily contained him now became his partner in developing new technologies. I don't understand, Lux Venta admitted after months of collaboration. You could have destroyed us. Why treat us as equals? Rodriguez looked up from their shared workstation. Because that's what you are. Different doesn't mean inferior. Your energy manipulation abilities are remarkable. When combined with human matter-energy conversion technology, we can create things neither of us could achieve alone. The collaboration produced the first stable matter-energy hybrid constructs in galactic history. Other species watched in amazement as former enemies worked together to push the boundaries of science. Similar partnerships formed throughout the galaxy. Braxy biological expertise, combined with human immune system knowledge, created medical advances that saved countless lives. Keth computational power merged with human intuitive thinking produced artificial intelligence systems that were both logical and creative. The Thakari proved the most difficult to integrate. Their entire culture was built around the concept that strength determined worth. Discovering that they had been weaker than humans all along shattered their worldview. War Sage Kralthak, serving his community service sentence, struggled with the new reality. He had been assigned to help rebuild worlds damaged by the old council's policies, working alongside humans, Melanie, and other species he had once dismissed as inferior. "I don't understand your people," he told Sergeant Williams, the human Marine who supervised the reconstruction work. "You have the power to rule us all. Why do you choose to serve instead?" Williams looked up from the refugee shelter they were building together. "Because ruling and leading are different things. Rulers take power. Leaders earn respect. But strength is meaningless without purpose," Williams finished. "The strongest person in the galaxy is useless if they use their strength to hurt others. Real strength protects people." Slowly, over months of working together, Kralthak began to understand. He watched humans risk their lives to save alien civilians in disaster zones. He saw human engineers work without sleep to restore power to planets whose people had once voted for human slavery. He observed human doctors treat patients from species that had called humans animals. "Your strength is in your character," he finally admitted to Williams. "We measured strength by the ability to dominate. You measure it by the willingness to sacrifice for others." The transformation wasn't universal or immediate. Some species remained resentful. A few attempted small rebellions. But the Guardian fleet's response was swift and precise. Rebellion leaders found themselves transported to comfortable detention facilities while civilian populations remained untouched. "We will not become the tyrants we replaced," Admiral Webb explained to his fleet commanders. "Every action we take must serve justice, not revenge." The galaxy learned to appreciate the difference. Human intervention prevented wars, but never conquered territories. Human technology was shared freely, but never used to create dependency. Human guards protected alien worlds, but never occupied them. 5 years after the trials, Ambassador Kik Stowe requested a private meeting with Sarah Chung. The Andorian had been one of humanity's harshest critics during the constitutional debates. "I owe you an apology," he said simply. "I believed human rule would be like council rule,